In news that just came in a short while ago, India has abstained from voting on Pakistan's bailout package at the IMF meeting. The International Monetary Fund took note of India's abstention from the vote. The IMF reviewed the extended fund facility lending program and also considered a fresh resilience and sustainability facility lending program of $1.3 billion for Pakistan. Now, India raised concerns over the efficacy of the IMF programs in the case of Pakistan, given its poor track record, and also on the possibility of misuse of debt financing funds for state-sponsored cross-border terrorism. India pointed out that rewarding continued sponsorship of cross-border terrorism sends a dangerous message to the global community, exposes funding agencies and donors to reputational risks, and also makes a mockery of global values. Well, Pakistan boasts of war readiness, but reality tells us a different story. Now, India's response to the Pahalgam terror attack dealt yet another blow to Pakistan's struggling economy. Bans on Pakistani ships, imports and postal services have hit home hard. Raghav Kumar Jha explores why Pakistan can't afford a war with India.
Struggling with a wrecked economy, Pakistan faces significant challenges like rising poverty, high inflation, and persistent debt issues. The country's economy has been badly impacted by factors like the COVID-19 pandemic, inflation, poor economic development, corruption, political unrest, and the effects of Russia-Ukraine war. According to reports, Pakistan has foreign exchange reserves of only $13.15 billion, whereas it has to pay foreign debts of $26 billion in the financial year 2025-26. Pakistan's GDP is at $338.37 billion, and it has only enough money to import goods for 2 months. In fact, Pakistan's economy is in shambles. A persistently high current account deficit and external debt obligations drained its foreign exchange reserves. By 2023, the country faced a severe balance of payment crisis, with reserves falling below $4 billion, enough for just a few weeks of imports. Pakistan is heavily reliant on external aid, particularly from the United States, China, and the international financial institutions like the International Monetary Fund or IMF. Pakistan's exports base remained narrow while imports grew consistently. Periodic IMF bailouts, more than 20 programs since 1980s, became a hallmark of Pakistan's economic policy. Each bailout brought temporary stability, but structural reforms were either delayed or diluted due to corruption. However, this is not the end of Pakistan's economic woes. The tougher times are ahead as India's retaliatory steps in the aftermath of Pahalgam terror attack threaten to break its crucial economic support links. India has imposed a blanket ban on direct or indirect import and transit of all goods originating in or exported from Pakistan following the closure of the Wagah-Atari trade route. The halt is likely to disrupt Pakistan's pharmaceutical, chemical, and food sectors, which depend heavily on Indian inputs. Informal trade via third countries like the UAE and Singapore will also come under strain due to heightened security and costs. India has barred all ships bearing the Pakistani flag from entering Indian ports and has suspended all maritime activities. Also, all postal and courier services in Pakistan stand suspended. Against this backdrop, the global rating agency Moody's has also warned Pakistan. The rating agency said on Monday that a sustained escalation in tensions with India would likely hit Pakistan's economy and hamper the government's ongoing fiscal consolidation. It warned the Indo-Pak tensions could impair Pakistan's access to external financing and put foreign exchange reserves, which is significantly low to meet existing debts, under severe stress. Amidst an economic crisis ridden by low reserves and high debts, Pakistan is running the country taking loans from the IMF. Against this backdrop, if Pakistan wages war with India, it will have to spend an estimated $1.5 to $3.2 million per day or $45 to $96 million per month, putting considerable pressure on Pakistan's defense budget of $7.64 billion. Amidst all this, how Pakistan will handle all this extraordinary stress on its economy is a million-dollar question. Raghav Kumar Jha for DD India.
And Jessica Taneja is joining us in the studio with the latest news on the IMF and India abstaining. Jessica, so India also raised the issue about how Pakistan is a prolonged offender with the IMF, taking so many bailouts, but really not keeping to its commitments in a sense. What exactly, has India said with regard to this particular tranche that they are trying to get from the IMF and their extended fund facility?
Right, this crucial meeting in DC, as it's morning in DC, and a long night for us here in New Delhi, Mark, as we track all the developments. It's important to understand what India has said in the context of why IMF bailouts for Pakistan are somehow only going on to benefit the Pakistan military and its establishment and its involvement in not just the foreign affairs or the defense affairs of the country, but also extending to a lot of projects that are funded and most often have Pakistan military personnel, being part of those various projects or those boards that are established. Say, for example, the 2021 UN report, in fact, if I may quote, described military-linked businesses as the largest conglomerate in Pakistan. Now, India here wants to put out its point very clearly and very categorically, because this does send a dangerous message to the world. I mean, what kind of reputational risks do you come with if you continue to support a debt-ridden country? You're looking at Pakistan, whose external debt is around $130 billion, Mark, most of which is owed to China, which is also currently its biggest defense supplier in terms of radars, fighter aircraft, or fighter jet, or you talk about any other important military equipment that Pakistan requires, roughly 81% of it if you go by the SIPRI report. Indicating the fact that, look, we do understand, that Pakistan has a crippled economy, but we also need to understand and tell the world that the reason it does not have a stable fiscal or a financial environment is because there is no civilian government at play.
Okay.
Right? There is only military who's
Indeed.
dictating everything, not just the political environment, the economic environment as well. And perhaps the level of corruption that we've seen over the years has not allowed the Pakistan economy to progress. There have been no fiscal reforms. Macroeconomic policies have not changed.
Yes.
The governance systems have not given any kind of, assurances or the likelihood of improvement in the coming future. Look at the stats, Mark. 42% of Pakistan is below poverty line, and that's 2.6 million people still. And that's a really, really alarming number in a population that has been struggling to elect a civilian government. You and I both know, we've covered elections even recently. The PMLN and the PPP were not the party the Pakistani nationals elected. It was completely orchestrated by the military for their own benefits. They continue to benefit from this turbulent environment. The popularity of the Pakistan army is going down, and perhaps it's taking away any kind of economic reforms to sort of come into existence in Pakistan, which it so desperately needs right now.
Indeed.
And certainly cannot afford a war.
So the IMF
with India.
plays this role to sort of help in Pakistan's economic survival in a sense. But we also know, given what you're saying, that Pakistan's internal turbulence is so bad that the economy really is struggling. It can never really get back on its feet. But apart from that, it has this parallel economy. That is why it's grey listed in the FATF. It's a parallel economy that's running on narcotics and all these other things so that it can basically fund terrorism. Now, if this money is also going towards terrorism, then there's a serious case. And India's abstention, probably also puts into context how Pakistan is misusing funds completely and is already grey listed under the Financial Action Task Force.
That's correct. Being grey listed on the Financial Action Task Force seems like routine for Pakistan in a sense, because it continues to not work on reforms at all, Mark. Because there is no civilian government, as I said, no prime minister in Pakistan has ever completed a term ever since Pakistan gained independence. So you understand how this has moved forward, how it has never really benefited the ordinary Pakistanis, even though they wanted a change. There was a desperation expressed by the Pakistani nationals or the individuals in the past as well. You see Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf leader Imran Khan, popular prime minister in the recent past, trying to bring in something, although he was also, of course, many would understand in a broader context, also aligned with the military in some sense or the other, because he had an eventual fallout. Things were different and the political landscape changed with the ascension of Asim Munir as the Pakistan General Chief.
Right.
But at the same time, with the current environment that Pakistan is providing, it doesn't really, sort of bring in a lot of confidence for even funding various projects in Pakistan. What kind of external, money can you bring in? Your forex reserves are down to $15 billion.
Yes.
And it's somehow going to not be a question of just managing things at this point. It will be, what do you do next? Because there are people who you would need to tell that the cost of war would be this. Imagine you're finding it difficult to get $1 billion aid at this point.
Yes.
The situation could be much more worse, and how the Pakistan military has continued to misuse the funds that have been given by the IMF. And that has been the primary opposition of India, not just with the IMF, but various multilateral institutions and banks, including the World Bank.
So
that you need to acknowledge that the Pakistan military has to be stopped, and that is the only way to do is to stop funding it, is to stop giving it any amount of money.
So this is a message also, perhaps subtly, to those who are funding Pakistan besides the IMF. I mean, there are nations that support Pakistan financially. China is one of them. But the other two strong donors, the UAE and Saudi Arabia, they are now getting closer to India in terms of, UAE has a free trade agreement with India. Saudi Arabia, on the day of this particular strike in Pahalgam, the Prime Minister was in Saudi Arabia. So we see that perhaps, there is also another message there.
That's correct. We're closer to our West Asian allies, and not just UAE and Saudi Arabia, even Qatar for that matter. It's not just about crude oil imports. There has been an enhanced bilateral relationship between India and many other West Asian countries. Talk about Kuwait, Prime Minister's visit to Kuwait as well in the recent past. So the outreach to West Asia has been quite significant, and in a sense, the relationship has built from what we've seen in the past. As you said, with the UAE, we have the CEPA, the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, with Saudi Arabia as well. Beyond energy ties, we're talking about expanding our bilateral trade with them as well. In fact, UAE remains to be our third largest trading partner, which says a lot, including most of our exports going there. So, looking at how India, on the other hand, is moving ahead with its economic gains, becoming the third largest economy in the world, improving its per capita income, wherein you have a state like Pakistan on the other hand. I mean, not that I want to draw a comparison to Pakistan, but just to sort of enlighten our audiences at some point where priorities of two neighbors, how different are they? And India cannot be, at this point, to be shown mercy in a sense where its neighbor is, in an economic, completely economic degraded situation. It has been. But where has it learnt its lessons? Where has it improved on its fiscal reforms? Where has it worked on various policies, especially with so much of interference, red tapeism, bureaucracy? Where has all of that improved? In the last 30 years that Pakistan has been receiving IMF bailouts, Mark, and let's understand that they've received approximately $6.9 billion so far from IMF.
Indeed.
And what have been the metrics to time and again understand that there has to be a limitation to what Pakistan receives from both allies in terms of military, aid as well as financial aid. There has to be a time where it's not about punishment, but it's about behavioral correction, both in the polity as well as its military.
We leave it there. Thank you very much, Jessica Taneja, for helping us understand why India abstained at the IMF on Pakistan's bailout.